In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, rescue workers from across the country traveled to Ground Zero. That's where they would help the unprecedented recovery effort. But for many of these remarkable men and women, there was an unsung hero right by their side. The search and rescue dogs of 9/11 served a vital role in the recovery effort in the days and weeks after the attack.
This is where he's getting the strongest scent from.
These brave dogs ventured into the aftermath, testing the unsteady terrain ahead of their owners, often injuring themselves in the mounds of mangled rubble, burning steel and broken glass. Working long and tiring shifts, these dogs continued searching for potential survivors. And like their human counterparts, they mourned for the loss of life that surrounded them.
After a long period of time, if you keep on finding cadavers after cadavers after cadavers, no victims, dogs tend to get down on themselves. That's why I try to bring them out here to let the people play with her.
And this playtime served as a relief for the workers as well, a break from the hell they were living, and a reminder of the small comforts in life that seem so far away. These dogs offered their intelligence, their strength, and their courage when it was needed the most. But what they offered best was what a dog always offers best: unconditional love.
We give them a lot of love, and they give us a lot of love back.
Now, 10 years later, only about a dozen search and rescue dogs are still alive from the hundreds that served in the aftermath. But their contribution to this country and its people should not be forgotten. Kaiser, who is one of the search and rescue dogs, and his owner, Tony Zentmaster, join me now. Hello, Tony.
Hi.
And hi. How you doing, Kaiser? Oh, he's a good-looking dog.
Oh,
Such a pleasure to have him and you here. Tony, I want to begin by just going back to the day. On that very day, September 11th, you got the call. Less than 24 hours after the events, you were at Ground Zero with Kaiser. Tell me what you first saw when you got there.
Well, they loaded about 30 of us in the back of a military deuce and a half that we travel with, and we traveled in as far as we could, but since it was the 12th, the roads hadn't been cleared very close to the pile, so we had to walk in about the last 4 blocks. As we were passing an old cemetery and different things, the powder and the debris started to get thicker and thicker, and then we began towing our equipment over top of it to get to where we could set up, and it was surreal. I mean, there was smoke, there was powder, there was big lights, big equipment, and all that sort of thing going on, and it just didn't seem real at first.
I want to ask you about the site itself. Kaiser got hurt the second day he was on the job. What happened?
Well, we'd worked the night of the 12th, and then the morning of the 13th, they called us after a couple hours and said they needed more dogs. So we got on our horse and got out there, and we were working on Building 7, and he went on in at one point, and when I called him back out, he said, "Okay, now what?" And I said, "Well, you're bleeding pretty bad, so let's look after that first." And kind of a slide off, a bad cut of his carpal pad, probably slid off a piece of steel and hooked it.
People don't understand just kind of the tough conditions. I mean, these dogs are going through rubble that no human has yet been able to get around, and they go in before the humans to make sure that things don't collapse and fall.
Yeah, they have remarkable agility. He was trained as a puppy from this, and he learned to manipulate his way around and be careful and to watch what he was doing. He had very much had that type of thing just worked into him as he went. But they distribute their weight, they move lightly and quickly. We have to be careful when we follow them, because sometimes they'll go across something and suddenly you're falling through where they just went across.
Kaiser now is 13 years old. He's one of only about a dozen of the original 9/11 search and rescue dogs that are still around. And you have to just think back these 10 years. I want to ask you something. What is the memory that just, even after 10 years, still just gets to you when you think about it?
Well, it's funny, this morning was the first time I'd been back here, and I started thinking about the event a little differently because I was back in Indianapolis all this time, and you think back originally, you start thinking about, here I am in 16 acres of devastation, and there were times, particularly at night, when you were just completely surrounded by devastation, fire, and smoke, and you were thinking, wow, I got to be careful. I could get lost out here and no one even know where to find me. But then this morning I started remembering that the pain that you felt thinking about all these guys that you were working with who had lost people that were near and dear to them. And the fact that, you start seeing the policemen and firemen here in town and start hearing some ambulances go by, and then you start remembering that all these people were really trying hard to suck it up and make it happen, but at the same time they were dealing with a lot of pain.
Tony, I think a lot of us understand, all the human endeavors. We sometimes forget the extraordinary role that these dogs played looking for, hopefully, survivors. They didn't really find survivors, but they found a lot of really body parts that helped eventually be identified. We've never identified all the nearly 3,000 people who have died. But had it not been for the dogs like Kaiser, the task would have been more difficult, and even the therapy that they provided to the workers to give them some semblance of hope and companionship made a huge difference. Thank you very much for sharing your story, and more importantly, for sharing Kaiser's heroic story.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.